The bottle slipped from Clara Martin's trembling fingers, and for one impossible moment, time crystallized like sugar in cold water. The Chanel No. 5, Teresa Moretti's Chanel No. 5, tumbled through the air in slow rotation, catching fragments of afternoon light through the mansion's floor-to-ceiling windows. Clara's breath locked in her throat. Her dark skin had gone cold, despite the Miami heat pressing against the glass. She lunged forward, hands outstretched, but physics had already condemned her. Then a larger hand, scarred, olive-toned, adorned with a gold signet ring bearing the Moretti family crest, snatched the bottle from the air with the precision of a viper strike. Drago Moretti stood in the doorway of his dead wife's bedroom, 6 feet 3 inches of controlled violence wrapped in a $1,000 suit. His jaw was carved from the same Sicilian stone as his ancestors' tombs. Those eyes, Christ, those eyes, were the color of espresso, and, just as bitter, boring into Clara with an intensity that made her knees weak. "I can explain," she whispered, but the words died in the vast space between them. He didn't speak, didn't blink, just stood there holding his dead wife's perfume, the bottle looking fragile in his massive palm, while something dangerous moved behind his expression like a shark beneath dark water. Clara had worked in the Moretti mansion for 3 months. 3 months of invisible servitude, of being the ghost who cleaned blood from marble floors and never asked questions. 3 months of watching Drago Moretti move through his empire of violence like a king through a graveyard, mourning a wife dead 2 years but still worshipped like a saint. And now she'd committed the ultimate transgression. "Signora Moretti, I didn't mean," the professional mask she'd worn for months cracked. Her Brazilian accent thickened with panic, words tumbling over each other. Drago took 1 step into the room. Just one. But Clara's back hit the vanity, and suddenly the opulent bedroom felt like a cell. "You know what this is?" His voice was velvet over gravel, the kind of quiet that preceded gunshots. "Yes, sir. Tell me." It belonged to Signora Teresa. Belonged. He turned the bottle slowly, examining it like evidence. Past tense. "Very good, Clara. You're smarter than you look." The insult, or was it a compliment, left her off balance. That was his gift, she'd learned. Drago Moretti kept everyone dancing on the edge of his intentions. "So explain to me," he continued, moving closer, "why find my maid in my dead wife's room, holding my dead wife's perfume on the anniversary of her death?" Clara's heart stopped. The anniversary. Jesus Christo, she'd forgotten. No wonder the house had been eerily empty this morning, the usual soldiers and associates absent. Drago always spent this day alone with his grief. "I was cleaning," she said, voice barely audible. The bottle had fallen behind the vanity. "I was just lying." The word cracked like a whip. He was close now, close enough that she could smell his cologne, bergamot and cedar, masculine and expensive. "I've killed men for less convincing lies, Clara. Try again." Her mouth went dry. This was it. 3 months of careful performance, about to collapse because of one mistake, one moment of weakness when she'd found the bottle and wondered what Teresa Moretti had smelled like. The woman who'd captured the heart of a monster. The woman whose ghost still ruled this house. "I wanted to know," Clara breathed, meeting his eyes for the first time. A mistake. His gaze was molten. "I wanted to know what she was like." Silence stretched between them, taut as wire. Then Drago did something that made Clara's blood freeze. He smiled. Not a kind smile. Not reassuring. It was the smile of a predator that had just discovered its prey was more interesting than anticipated. "You wanted to know, Teresa." He unscrewed the bottle cap with deliberate slowness. "Then let me show you." Before Clara could process his intention, Drago closed the remaining distance between them, took her wrist in his free hand, his grip iron, inescapable, and pressed the perfume bottle to her pulse point. Clara gasped, the cool glass against her heated skin, his thumb on her racing pulse, feeling every terrified beat. The scent of jasmine and rose blooming between them. Teresa's ghost made manifest. Drago. His first name escaped her lips unbidden. His eyes darkened. "You don't get to call me that." "Then let me go." "No." He applied perfume to her other wrist, the gesture almost tender, absolutely terrifying. You wanted to be close to her, to understand her. So let's complete the picture, Clara. He touched the bottle to her throat, just above her collarbone, where her pulse hammered visibly against her dark skin. The scent enveloped her, sophisticated and haunting, a dead woman's signature coating her alive body. Please, Clara whispered, but she wasn't sure what she was begging for anymore. Drago stepped back, finally releasing her, but his gaze traveled over her with an intensity that felt physical, assessing, comparing, and something else, something raw and wounded and furious. You're nothing like her, he said finally. Teresa was porcelain, delicate, pure. His lip curled. You're something else entirely, aren't you? Clara's fear began alchemizing into something more dangerous. Anger. I'm sorry I'm not your dead wife, Signore. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. What did you say? She should stop. Should apologize. Should remember she was nobody, a Brazilian immigrant with a fake work visa, playing maid in a house owned by one of Miami's most dangerous men. But 3 months of swallowing her pride, of diminishing herself, of watching this man worship a memory while treating living people like furniture. It had built up like pressure in a sealed container. I said I'm sorry I'm not Teresa, Clara repeated, lifting her chin. I'm sorry I'm alive and she's dead. I'm sorry I had the audacity to touch something that belonged to her. But I'm not sorry for being curious about the woman whose shrine I clean every day. Drago's hand shot out, gripping her jaw. Not painfully, but firmly enough to make his point. He tilted her face up, forcing her to maintain eye contact. You think you know me? His voice was barely above a whisper. You think you understand this house? What I've built? What I've lost? No, signore. I don't think about you at all. Another lie. She thought about him constantly. The way he moved. The brief flashes of humanity beneath the monster. The nights she'd heard him in his study, drunk and alone, talking to photographs. His thumb traced her jawline, a gesture that felt like a threat and a caress simultaneously. You're either very brave or very stupid. Brasileiros are both. Something flickered across his expression. Surprise, maybe, or reluctant amusement. He released her abruptly, stepping back, putting distance between them like it physically pained him to remain close. Get out, he said quietly. Clara moved toward the door, her legs unsteady. Clara. She stopped but didn't turn around. Wear that perfume tomorrow, when you serve breakfast. Her breath caught. What? Because I told you to. And in this house, you do what I say. Or you leave. Your choice. Clara walked out without responding, her heart rioting in her chest. Teresa Moretti's perfume clinging to her skin like a promise or a curse. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that Drago Moretti stood in his dead wife's bedroom for 20 minutes after she left, gripping the perfume bottle with white knuckles, fighting the urge to follow her. Because Clara Martin smelled like Teresa. But she looked at him like she wasn't afraid to see the monster underneath. And that changed everything. Before we continue with Clara's story, can I ask you something? I spend 15 to 20 hours researching, writing, and perfecting each story for you. That's nearly a full week of work to create these cinematic experiences completely free. While you're here enjoying this story, YouTube only shows it to a tiny fraction of people unless you take just 2 seconds to hit subscribe. Here's the thing. If just half of you watching right now subscribed, this channel would explode, and I could create even deeper, more complex stories for you every single week. But only about 3% of viewers are subscribed. That means 97% of you are enjoying hours of content, but haven't taken that tiny step. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for a single click that tells YouTube, show this to more people. So here's my request. If you're enjoying Clara's story so far, click subscribe. It takes 2 seconds and means everything to this channel's survival. Also, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing this global community we're building. Last video, we had viewers from 47 different countries. Now, let's get back to the story, because what happens next changes everything for Clara. The next morning arrived wrapped in the particular tension that precedes thunderstorms. Clara stood before her bathroom mirror in the small pool house Drago provided for live-in staff, staring at the perfume bottle she'd stolen from Teresa's room. No, not stolen. Been ordered to wear. Her hand trembled as she applied it. The scent transported her immediately back to that moment. Drago's hand on her wrist, his thumb against her pulse, the heat of his body inches from hers. She closed her eyes, steadying her breathing. 3 months. She'd been here 3 months. Just a little longer. But a little longer for what? She examined her reflection critically. Dark eyes and a darker face, surrounded by a halo of natural curls she'd tamed into a bun. The black and white maid's uniform she wore was purposely unflattering, designed to make her invisible. That had been the point, after all. Be invisible. Gather information. Get out. Except Drago Moretti had seen her yesterday. Really seen her. And Clara wasn't sure if that was a catastrophe or an opportunity. The main house loomed before her like a Mediterranean palace transplanted to Miami Beach. Cream-colored stone, terracotta tiles, palm trees swaying in the pre-storm breeze. Beautiful. Pristine. Built on bones and blood money. Antonio, Drago's consigliere, intercepted her at the kitchen entrance. He was a lean man in his 50s, with silver hair and the watchful eyes of someone who'd survived decades in a violent world through observation. Clara. His tone was neutral, but something flickered behind his gaze. Il Capo wants breakfast on the East Terrace this morning. His usual. Si, Signore Antonio. And Clara. He touched her arm lightly, stopping her. Leaned in close enough to whisper, "Whatever game you're playing, be very careful. Drago hasn't been the same since you arrived. Some of us have noticed." I slid down her spine. "I don't know what you mean." "Of course you don't." He released her. The terrace. 10 minutes. Clara prepared the breakfast with shaking hands. Espresso, dark and bitter like Drago's soul. Fresh cornetti from the Italian bakery he had flown in weekly. Fruit, sliced with precision because the man noticed everything. An orange juice, fresh squeezed, in a crystal glass. She arranged it on the silver tray, checked her appearance one final time, and walked toward her fate wearing a dead woman's perfume. The East Terrace overlooked the ocean, and Drago sat with his back to the view, facing the house. Strategic positioning, always aware of approaches, never vulnerable to surprise. He wore linen trousers and a white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms roped with muscle and scarred from a violent life. He was reading a newspaper, printed, not digital, because Drago Moretti was old-fashioned in his brutality and didn't look up when she approached. Clara set the tray down with practiced silence, began arranging his place setting. "Stop." She froze. Drago set down the paper slowly, deliberately. Then he looked at her. The impact of his gaze was physical. His eyes traveled from her face down her body and back up, not lasciviously, but with the focused intensity of someone solving a puzzle. "Come here." Clara's feet moved before her brain could intervene. She stopped at arm's length. Closer. Another step. Close enough now to see the faint scar bisecting his left eyebrow. Close enough to smell his cologne mixing with her, Teresa's, perfume. Drago reached out, hooked one finger into the collar of her uniform, and pulled her down until her face was level with his. His nostrils flared slightly as he inhaled. "You wore it," he murmured. "You told me to. And you always do what you're told. When my employer gives a direct order, yes." Employer. He released her collar, but didn't lean back. "Is that what I am to you, Clara?" She didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the truth that he was her target, her mission, the man she'd been sent to infiltrate, felt suddenly complicated by the heat emanating from his body and the dangerous softness in his expression. "You're afraid of me," Drago observed. "But not enough." "Why is that?" "I don't know what you mean, Signore." There's again. That little spark. That flash of defiance. His hand came up, catching a curl that had escaped her bun. He wounded around his finger, testing its texture. "Teresa never defied me. Not once in 5 years of marriage." Then maybe she should have. The words escaped before Clara could stop them. Suicidal. Absolutely suicidal. Drago went very, very still. What? But Clara had already jumped off the cliff. Might as well enjoy the fall. I've cleaned this house for 3 months, Signore Moretti. I've dusted every photograph, every shrine, every preserved piece of your perfect dead wife. And you know what I think? Enlighten me. His voice was soft, deadly soft. I think Teresa must have been very lonely. Married to a man who put her on a pedestal so high, she couldn't breathe. A man who worshipped her, but never really saw her. You know nothing about my marriage. I know you've kept her bedroom exactly as it was the day she died. I know you haven't moved a single piece of her clothing. I know you drink yourself unconscious every Thursday night, the night she died, and I'm the one who cleans up the broken glass. Clara's voice dropped. I know you're not mourning a wife, Signore Moretti. You're punishing yourself for something, and everyone in this house is suffering because of it. The slap didn't come. Neither did the gunshot. Instead, Drago released her hair and leaned back in his chair, regarding her with an expression she couldn't decipher. You're fired. Clara's heart plummeted. Pack your things. Be out by noon. Signore. Or, he picked up his espresso cup, examined it with false casualness. You can have dinner with me tonight. 8 o'clock. The restaurant I own in Coral Gables. We're something other than that uniform. Clara blinked. I don't understand. You spent 3 months watching me, Clara, making assumptions, forming opinions. He sipped his espresso, eyes never leaving hers. Tonight, I watch you. I form opinions, and then we'll see if you still think you understand anything about my marriage or my grief. That's not appropriate. I'm your employee. You just told me to my face that I emotionally neglected my dead wife. I think we're past appropriate. He set down the cup. Your choice. Unemployment or dinner. But decide now. This wasn't part of the plan. Clara had been sent here to gather evidence on Drago Moretti's operations. Weapons trafficking, money laundering, connections to cartels. Her handlers at the FBI had been explicit. Observe, record, report. Do not engage. But her handlers didn't understand what it was like to stand in the gravitational field of a man like Drago Moretti. Didn't understand that she'd learned more about him in 3 months of silent observation than any wiretap could capture. And maybe, dinner with the beast could get her closer to the heart of his empire than months more of cleaning toilets. 8 o'clock, Clara heard herself say. What's the dress code? Drago's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. Surprise me. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. Clara? One more thing. Yes. If you're thinking about running, don't. I have people watching the airport, the bus stations, the marina. You agreed to dinner. You'll be there. Understood. Clara met his eyes, saw the predator lurking behind the civility, and nodded once. As she walked away, she heard him say, almost too softly to catch, Teresa never wore that perfume as well as you do. Clara made it to the pool house before her legs gave out. She sat on the edge of her bed, hands trembling, and pulled out the burner phone hidden in her mattress lining. One text to her handler. That's all it would take. They could pull her out, abort the mission, get her safety. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. 3 months of work. 3 months of building this cover. And now, inexplicably, impossibly, she had an invitation into Drago Moretti's inner world. A chance to see behind the mask. A chance to finish what she'd started. Or a chance to get herself killed. Clara thought about Antonio's warning. About the way Drago had looked at her, hungry and haunted. About the perfume that apparently blurred the line between his dead wife and his very alive maid. She put the phone away without sending the message. At 7:45 that evening, Clara Martins walked out of the pool house wearing a dress that cost her an entire month's salary from her cover job. Emerald green silk that hugged every curve, with a neckline that suggested rather than revealed. Her curls fell loose around her shoulders in controlled chaos. Heels that made her legs look endless. And Teresa's perfume, because Drago hadn't told her not to wear it. The car waiting for her was a black Mercedes, driver already holding the door open. Clara slid into the back seat, pulse hammering. You look terrified, Pequeña. Clara's head snapped to the side. Drago sat in the shadows of the far seat, dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than her car. His hair was slicked back, emphasizing the brutal planes of his face. "You said 8 o'clock at the restaurant," Clara managed. "I lied." He leaned forward slightly into the light. "I wanted to see what you'd do. If you'd run. If you'd call the police. If you'd show up at all. And I passed your test. You're here, aren't you?" His gaze traveled over her slowly, thoroughly. "That dress is dangerous, Clara. You said to surprise you. I didn't say to give me a heart attack." But there was approval in his tone. "Heat. Where did a maid get a dress like that? I had a life before I worked for you, Signore Moretti." Drago. He reached across the space between them, took her hand. His thumb found her pulse point, the same spot where he'd applied perfume yesterday. "When we're alone, you call me Drago. That's not appropriate. Nothing about tonight is appropriate." He pulled her closer until she had no choice but to slide across the leather seat. Close enough now to see gold flecks in his dark eyes. "Do you know what you're doing, Clara? Having dinner with my employer. Try again. I don't know what you want me to say." "The truth." His free hand came up, cupping her jaw. "Why did you really come tonight?" "Because I'm investigating you. Because I'm trying to build a case that will put you in prison for life. Because I'm FBI and you're a criminal and this is all just an operation. Because you scare me," Clara whispered instead. "And I've never been good at running from things that scare me." Drago's thumb traced her lower lip. "I do scare you. I can feel your pulse racing. But that's not fear, is it, Pequena? Or not just fear? Don't what? Don't touch you? Don't notice that you lean into my hand, even while you tell me to stop? Don't acknowledge that there's something between us? There's nothing between us. You're my employer. I'm your maid. You stop being just my maid the moment you put on my dead wife's perfume." His voice dropped to a rough whisper. "Do you know how long it's been since I felt anything, Clara? Since I wanted anything? 2 years. 2 years of numbness and grief and violence. And then you show up, invisible for months, until suddenly you're all I can see." Drago. And the worst part, he laughed, but it was a broken sound. "You're nothing like her. Teresa was soft and sweet and safe. You're fire and defiance and danger. I should fire you. Should send you away before this becomes something irreversible. Then why don't you? Because I'm a selfish bastard who wants what he wants." His forehead dropped to rest against hers. "And I want to know what you taste like, what you sound like when you stop performing, who you really are behind that mask you wear." Clara's breath came in shallow gasps. This was spinning out of control. She was supposed to be running him, not the other way around. "This is wrong. Probably. I should leave. Yes. I'm going to leave." "No, you're not." And he was right. She wasn't. Because despite every training session, every protocol, every warning her handlers had drilled into her, Clara Martins wanted to know what Drago Moretti tasted like too. Their lips met like the collision of tectonic plates, violent and inevitable and world-changing. Drago kissed like he did everything else, with complete focus and barely restrained violence. His hand fisted in her hair, angling her head, deepening the kiss until Clara forgot where she ended and he began. She gasped against his mouth, and he swallowed the sound, pressing her back against the leather seat. His weight, his heat, his scent, it overwhelmed her defenses like an invading army. "Tell me to stop," Drago growled against her throat. "Tell me this is insane. It's insane, but you don't want me to stop." "No." The truth escaped her. "I don't." His teeth grazed her collarbone, and Clara arched into him, propriety and mission parameters burning away like morning fog. This was dangerous. This was career-ending. This was... A sharp knock on the divider window made them both freeze. Drago pulled back, breathing hard, eyes black with desire. He jabbed the intercom button. "What?" "We've arrived at the restaurant, Capo." The driver's voice was carefully neutral. Claire looked out the window, dazed. They were indeed parked in front of an upscale Italian restaurant. Valet waiting discreetly at a distance. Drago smoothed down his suit jacket, ran a hand through his disheveled hair. When he looked at Clara again, the hunger was still there, but leashed. Controlled. "We're going to go inside," he said quietly. "Have a civilized dinner. Make small talk. Pretend we're two normal people on a date. And then I'm going to take you home. Walk you to your door. And you're going to decide if you invite me in." His hand cupped her cheek. "Because I won't take this decision away from you, Clara. Whatever happens next happens, because we both choose it. Understood. Clara nodded, not trusting her voice. Good. He exited the car first, then offered his hand to help her out. The moment they stepped onto the sidewalk, his entire demeanor changed. The dangerous lover disappeared, replaced by the composed Dawn. His hand settled at the small of her back, possessive but respectful. The restaurant was called Paradiso, and it lived up to its name. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, the quiet murmur of Miami's elite enjoying $800 bottles of wine. The maitre d' greeted Drago by name, led them to a private corner table with a view of the Miami skyline. They ordered. Clara chose the least expensive pasta on the menu. Drago ordered for them both anyway, switching her choice to lobster ravioli without asking permission. I could have ordered for myself, Clara said when they were alone. But you would have chosen wrong. You're nervous, not actually wanting pasta. He poured wine into her glass. Am I wrong? No, she admitted, but it's still presumptuous. I'm a presumptuous man, Clara. Haven't you figured that out yet? They fell into conversation, surprisingly easy despite the tension humming between them. Drago told her about growing up in Sicily, the summer spent learning his father's trade. Clara countered with carefully edited memories of Brazil, street festivals, and beach nights. They argued about politics, discovered a shared love of old films, debated whether Miami or Sao Paulo had better nightlife. And somewhere between the entree and dessert, Clara realized with creeping horror that she was enjoying herself. This wasn't supposed to happen. Drago Moretti was a target, not a man. A criminal, not a complicated person with depth and humor and unexpected vulnerability. But he made her laugh, challenged her intellectually, looked at her like she was something precious and dangerous simultaneously. Tell me about Teresa, Clara said suddenly, needing to shatter the intimacy building between them. Drago's expression shuddered. Why? Because her ghost is sitting at this table with us. Because you kissed me while I'm wearing her perfume. Because I need to understand what I'm competing with. He was quiet for a long moment, swirling his wine glass. When he spoke, his voice was distant. I met Teresa when I was 30. She was 23, working in an art gallery in Coral Gables. I went there to buy a painting for my mother's birthday. Saw Teresa instead. He smiled faintly. I courted her properly. Flowers. Dinners. Promised her I'd leave the family business, go legitimate. She believed me. I believed me. But you don't just leave this life, Clara. It's bone deep. Blood deep. What happened? I happened. 2 years into our marriage, there was an attempt on my life. Car bomb. I survived. The woman standing next to me, a tourist, wrong place, wrong time, didn't. He drained his wine. Teresa saw the news footage, saw what my world really looked like. The violence, the casualties. She begged me to stop. But you didn't. I couldn't. This empire my father built, my grandfather before him, it's not something you retire from. So I promised Teresa I'd keep her separate from it. Build her a perfect life. Gallery openings. Charity galas. Everything beautiful and clean. His laugh was bitter. I turned her into a bird in a gilded cage and convinced myself it was love. Drago. She got sick. Brain aneurysm, completely random. One morning, she said she had a headache. By evening, she was gone. He met Clara's eyes. I never even got to say goodbye. Never told her that her perfect life was a prison. Never apologized for being too much of a coward to choose her over this. Clara reached across the table, covered his hand with hers. She knew you loved her. Did she? Or did she know I loved the idea of her? The pure, untouchable thing I could worship to convince myself I wasn't a monster. You're not a monster. You don't know what I've done, Clara. I know you loved your wife enough to preserve her memory. I know you're honest enough to question whether that love was fair to her. She paused. I know you're more complicated than you want anyone to see. Drago turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. And what about you? Who's Clara Martins when she's not scrubbing floors for a man like me? Careful. Dangerous territory. I grew up in Sao Paulo, Clara said, sticking to her cover story. Poor neighborhood. The kind where you learn to fight or you don't survive. My mother cleaned houses for rich families. I used to go with her, watch how they lived. I promised myself I'd get out. Get somewhere better. And Miami is better? Miami is complicated. That's not an answer. I'm a complicated woman. Drago's thumb stroked across her knuckles. Why do I get the feeling you're still performing, Clara? That this beautiful, defiant woman sitting across from me is another mask? Because you're too perceptive for your own good, Clara thought. Because you're making me forget this is an operation. Everyone wears masks, Drago. Even you. Especially me. He raised her hand, pressed his lips to her knuckles. But I find myself wanting to take mine off around you. And that's terrifying. When Drago paid the check and offered his hand, Clara took it without hesitation. The ride back to the mansion was silent, thick with possibility. Drago kept her hand in his, occasionally bringing it to his lips, like he couldn't bear not touching her. When they pulled up to the estate, he walked her to the pool house door like he'd promised. "Thank you for tonight," Drago said quietly. "I haven't felt this human in longer than I can remember. It's just dinner. We both know it's more than that." He stepped closer, crowding her against the door. His hands settled on her waist. "Tell me to leave, Clara. Tell me this is where it ends." She should. Every protocol screamed at her to end this before it became irreversible. Before she compromised the entire operation. Before, Clara grabbed his collar and pulled him down into a kiss. This time, there was no hesitation. No pretense of restraint. Drago groaned against her mouth, pressing her harder against the door, his hands sliding up her sides, mapping her curves through silk. Clara fumbled for the door handle, got it open, and they stumbled inside without breaking the kiss. Drago kicked the door shut, spun her around, pressed her against the wall. Last chance, he panted against her throat. Last chance to stop this. "Shut up," Clara gasped, "and take off that jacket." He did. She helped, because her fingers worked faster than his at buttons and buckles. His shirt joined the jacket on the floor. "Wait." His chest heaved. "I need to know something first." "What? Is this real? Or are you using me for something?" Clara's blood turned to ice. "What? I'm not stupid, Clara. A beautiful woman appears at my house, takes a menial job, stays invisible for months, until suddenly she's everywhere I look." His eyes searched hers. "So I need to know, is this real? Or am I being played?" This was it. The moment of truth. Clara could confess everything. Who she was, why she was really here. Or she could lie. Could preserve the operation. Could. "It's real," she whispered. And the terrifying part was, she meant it. "I don't know when it became real, but it is. You're real. This is real." Drago studied her face for a long moment, searching for deception. Whatever he saw satisfied him, because he kissed her again, softer this time. "Reverent." "Then stop me if I go too fast," he murmured against her lips. "Because once I have you, Clara, I don't share. I don't let go. I don't want you to let go." They made it to the bed in a tangle of limbs and desperate touches. Drago laid her down like she was something precious, then covered her body with his. They made love like the world was ending. Urgent and desperate and tender and rough. Afterward, they lay tangled together, sweat slicked and breathing hard. Drago pulled her against his chest, his heartbeat gradually slowing beneath her ear. "Stay with me tonight," he murmured into her hair. "Don't make me go back to that empty house." "Okay," Clara whispered. They fell asleep like that, two people who'd found something unexpected in each other. But in the darkness, while Drago slept, Clara stared at the ceiling and felt the weight of her betrayal settling over her like a shroud. Because in 12 hours, her handlers were expecting a full report. And Clara Martins had nothing to give them except a confession that she'd fallen for the target. 3 weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and careful deception. Clara maintained her position as maid during the day, documenting everything she could about Drago's operations. At night, she became something else, his confidant, his lover, the woman who could make him forget the empire built on violence. She learned things, important things, shipment schedules, account numbers, names of suppliers and buyers in Drago's weapons trafficking network. She photographed documents when he was in the shower, memorized conversations, fed information to her handlers in carefully coded texts. But she also learned other things. That Drago took his espresso with 1 sugar, not 2. That he had nightmares about the car bombing that killed the tourist. that he played piano when he thought no one could hear, beautiful, melancholy compositions that revealed the artist buried beneath the killer, that he was falling in love with her. And God help her, she was falling back. "You're distracted tonight," Drago observed one evening. They were in his study, Clara supposedly dusting while he worked. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "Liar." He spun his chair around, captured her wrist, pulled her into his lap. "Tell me." Clara settled against him, her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever wish you could start over? Be someone different?" "Every day." His hand stroked through her hair. "Why do you ask?" "Just thinking about choices. The things we can't undo." "Clara, if this is about us." "It's not. It's about me. About who I am. Who I was before." Drago tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I don't care about your past. Only your present. Only that you're here with me. What if my past is worse than you think?" "Impossible. My past includes at least a dozen bodies buried in the Everglades." He said it lightly, but they both knew he wasn't joking. "Whatever you've done, whoever you were, it doesn't change this. Us." Clara wanted to believe him, wanted to think that love could survive the revelation that she was FBI, that everything about her was a lie, that she'd been sent to destroy him. But she knew better. "I need to tell you something," she started. Drago's phone rang. He glanced at it, swore in Italian. "I have to take this. Business. Give me 5 minutes." "Of course." He kissed her forehead and stepped out onto the terrace, speaking rapid Italian into the phone. Clara sat alone in the study, surrounded by the evidence of his crimes and her betrayal, and made a decision. She pulled out her burner phone and typed a message to her handlers. "Asterisk, I'm out. Extract me tonight. Operation compromised. Asterisk." But before she could hit send, Drago's actual phone, sitting on his desk, buzzed with a text notification. Clara shouldn't have looked, but old habits died hard. The message was from Antonio. "Asterisk, the FBI agent embedded as your maid. We found her wire. What do you want me to do with her?" Asterisk. Clara's blood turned to ice. The phone slipped from her nerveless fingers. They knew. How long had they known? She looked up to find Drago standing in the doorway, phone hanging loosely at his side. His expression was carefully blank. "How long?" Clara whispered. 2 weeks. His voice was conversational. "Calm." The calm before execution. "Antonio found the wire in your room. Did a background check. FBI Special Agent Clara Martins, embedded to gather evidence on weapons trafficking." "Drago, I want you to understand something." He walked toward her slowly, each step measured. "When Antonio told me, I had 3 options. Kill you, turn you," or he paused. "See if whatever was happening between us was real." Clara stood frozen as he approached. "So, I've been feeding you false information for 2 weeks. Watching you dutifully report it to your handlers. Watching you struggle with the guilt." He stopped in front of her. "Watching you fall in love with me despite knowing you were supposed to be using me. You're going to kill me." It wasn't a question. "I should." His hand came up, cupped her jaw. Almost gentle. "You're a federal agent. You infiltrated my home, my life, my bed. Every moment we've shared was part of your operation." "No." Clara's voice broke. "Not every moment. What I said earlier, what I feel for you. That's real, Drago. I swear it's real. How do I know you're not still performing?" "You don't." She grabbed his wrist, pressed it harder against her face. "You just have to decide if you believe me. The same way I had to decide if I believed you when you said your feelings were real." They stood frozen in that tableau. Cop and criminal, lover and enemy, truth and lies so tangled up neither knew where one ended and the other began. "I could disappear you," Drago said quietly. "No body, no evidence. Your handlers would assume I killed you once your cover was blown. I know. I could turn you, make you a double agent, feed your people whatever I want them to know. I know. Or I could walk away, let you leave, go back to your real life. Pretend these months never happened. Is that what you want?" "What I want," Drago said roughly, "is for you to be anyone but who you are. What I want is for this to be simple. What I want." His forehead dropped to rest against hers. "What I want is you, Clara, and I hate myself for it." "Then we're even," Clara whispered, "because I want you too, even though it's betraying everything I stand for, even though it could destroy my career, even though you're a criminal and I'm supposed to put you in prison. So what do? Clara pulled back far enough to meet his eyes. We choose. Right now. No more lies. No more games. Just the truth. And what's the truth, Special Agent Martins? The truth is I love you. The words fell between them like grenades. I love you even though I shouldn't. Even though it's wrong. Even though every protocol says what I feel for you is just Stockholm Syndrome or manipulation or anything except what it actually is. Which is real, messy, impossible. She laughed, but it came out broken. I came here to destroy you, Drago. And instead you destroyed me. Broke down every wall I had. Made me question everything I thought I knew about right and wrong. Drago was silent for a long moment. Then, I've killed men for less than what you've done to me. I know. I should hate you. I know. But I don't. He pulled her against him, sudden and fierce. Christo, I don't. And I've spent 2 weeks trying to figure out if I'm the biggest fool alive, or if maybe, some things are worth a risk. Clara clung to him, face buried in his chest. What are you saying? I'm saying I choose you. Even knowing what you are. Even knowing you could betray me tomorrow. I choose this. His hand, fisted in her hair, tilted her head back. But I need to know you choose it too. Not because you're afraid I'll kill you. Not because you're in too deep to get out. Because you genuinely want this life with me. I do. The words felt like wedding vows. Binding. Irrevocable. I choose you, Drago. I'll resign from the FBI. Disappear. Whatever it takes. You'd give up everything for me. Wouldn't you do the same? He kissed her then, and it tasted like surrender and victory simultaneously. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Drago rested his forehead against hers. We can't stay here, he said. Once you go dark, the FBI will come looking. They'll assume I killed you. Turn this place upside down. Where would we go? I have a house. In Sicily. Small village where my grandmother was born. No one knows about it except Antonio. He pulled back, searched her face. We could disappear there. Start over. Leave all of this behind. You'd leave your empire? Teresa wanted me to. I wouldn't do it for her. His thumb traced Clara's lower lip. But I'll do it for you. If it means keeping you. If it means we get a chance at something real. Clara's mind raced. This wasn't how operations ended. Agents didn't fall in love with targets and run away to Sicily. But agents also didn't usually feel what she felt. This certainty that if she let Drago Moretti walk away, she'd regret it for the rest of her life. When do we leave? She asked. Drago's smile was fierce and beautiful. Tonight. Pack light. We'll buy whatever you need once we're there. What about Antonio? Your business. Antonio's been wanting to retire for years. I'll turn operations over to him. The family will survive without me. He kissed her again, softer. But I won't survive without you. Not anymore. They spent the next 2 hours in controlled chaos. Drago made calls, arranged transfers, set contingencies in motion. Clara gathered the few things she actually cared about. Not much, since most of her possessions were props for her cover anyway. At midnight, they met Antonio in the study. The old consigliera looked between them, with an expression Clara couldn't quite read. You're sure about this, Drago? He asked quietly. More sure than I've been about anything. Antonio turned to Clara. And you? You're choosing this life? Once you walk away from the FBI, there's no going back. You'll be a fugitive, an accomplice. I know what I'm choosing, Clara said firmly. Then I have something for you. Antonio pulled out an envelope, handed it to Drago. I took the liberty of creating new identities for both of you. Passports, driver's licenses, bank accounts. As of tomorrow, you're Marco and Lucia Esposito, newlyweds from Naples relocating to Sicily. Drago embraced his old friend. They spoke in rapid Italian, but Clara caught enough to understand it was goodbye. When they separated, Antonio turned to Clara. Take care of him. He acts tough, but he's more breakable than he looks. I will, Clara promised. They left through a service exit and climbed into an unmarked car. As they drove away from the mansion, from Clara's old life, from Drago's empire, from everything they'd been, she watched the lights recede in the side mirror. Regrets? Drago asked, hand finding hers in the darkness. Clara laced their fingers together. Ask me in 10 years. Still stubborn. You love it. I love you. They flew out of a private airfield at 3 a.m. The flight to Rome took 11 hours. From there, they drove to the Sicilian countryside, to a village so small it didn't appear on most maps. The house was perfect, old stone, terracotta roof, overlooking olive groves and the distant Mediterranean. No guards, no security systems, just a house where two people could build a life. Their first night, they lay in bed, listening to crickets and distant church bells. Drago traced patterns on Clara's bare shoulder, his touch reverent. "Tell me something true," he murmured. "Something you've never told anyone." Clara thought about it. "When I was a little girl in Brazil, before my mother died, she used to tell me I'd do something important with my life. Change the world somehow." She smiled in the darkness. "I always thought she meant I'd be a hero. Save people. Fight for justice. And instead you fell in love with a criminal. Instead, I learned that the world isn't as simple as heroes and villains. That people are complicated. That love doesn't care about right and wrong." "Your turn," Clara said. "Tell me something true." Drago was quiet for a moment. "The night Teresa died, I was relieved." Clara stiffened. "What? Not that she was gone. Never that. But relieved that she wouldn't have to see what I was becoming. Wouldn't have to watch me sink deeper into the darkness." His voice roughened. "I loved her, but she made me want to be better than I was. And I hated myself for not being able to change. With you." "What? With you, I don't have to pretend. You've seen the worst of me, and you're still here. That's freedom, Clara. You're my freedom." She kissed him then, long and deep and tender. They made love slowly, taking their time, learning each other all over again in this new life they'd chosen. The weeks turned into months. Drago taught Clara Italian, and she taught him to cook Brazilian food. They walked through olive groves and swam in hidden coves, visited local markets where no one knew who they'd been, only who they were now. Marco and Lucia Esposito, a couple in love. Nothing more, nothing less. 5 years later, Clara, now Lucia full-time, stood on the terrace of their home, watching the sunset paint the Mediterranean in shades of amber and rose. She heard footsteps behind her, felt strong arms wrap around her waist. "Mama, Papa says dinner is ready," a small voice called from inside. Clara smiled. Their daughter, Isabella, 3 years old and already showing her father's stubbornness and her mother's fire. Drago kissed Clara's neck. "Our daughter has your bossy streak. She has your dramatic flair. Poor thing, doomed from both sides." They walked inside hand in hand, to the table where Isabella sat coloring with fierce concentration. A normal family, a normal life. Except Clara still had nightmares sometimes about her old life. And Drago still woke up reaching for guns that weren't there anymore. And they both knew that the FBI hadn't stopped looking. They'd just gotten better at hiding. But they also had this, a daughter who knew nothing of their violent pasts. A community that accepted them as Marco and Lucia, the quiet couple who kept to themselves but were always kind. A love that had survived impossible odds and grown stronger for it. "Do you ever regret it?" Drago asked later, after Isabella was asleep. "Giving up your career? Your country? Everything you worked for?" Clara thought about it honestly. Thought about the agent she'd been, the woman who believed in absolute justice and clear moral lines. "No," she said finally. "That life was built on certainty. This life is built on love. And love is better, even though we're criminals. Even though, maybe especially because." She kissed him. "We chose each other over everything else. That's not weakness, Drago. That's the bravest thing we've ever done." He pulled her closer, and they stayed like that. Two people who destroyed each other's lives and rebuilt something better from the wreckage, watching the stars emerge over the Mediterranean. In Miami, the FBI officially closed the file on Special Agent Clara Martins, presumed dead. In that same city, the Moretti Empire continued under new management, Antonio running things until his eventual retirement. But in a small Sicilian village, Marco and Lucia Esposito lived quietly, raised their daughter, and loved each other with the fierce devotion of people who'd sacrificed everything for that love. And every year on their anniversary, Drago would dab a trace of Chanel No. 5 on Clara's wrist. Not to remember his dead wife, But to honor the moment, everything changed. The moment he caught his maid using that perfume and discovered that some betrayals lead not to death, but to life. Clara would laugh, kiss him, and remind him that she'd long since switched to her own signature scent. But they both understood the ritual. It was their way of acknowledging the complicated path that had led them here. From destruction to devotion. From enemies to everything. Their story didn't have a traditional happy ending. They were still fugitives, still looking over their shoulders, still marked by the violence of their pasts. But they were together, and in the end, that was the only ending that mattered. And that's how a maid and a monster became something neither could have imagined. A family. If you made it this far, you just experienced a journey of love, betrayal, and impossible choices. I need to know, did you see Clara being FBI coming? Do you think they made the right choice running away? Would you sacrifice everything for love? Tell me in the comments right now. And if this story gave you chills, made you question your own morals, or had you rooting for two people who absolutely shouldn't work together, you need to subscribe because next week's story is even more twisted. A surgeon discovers her patient is the hitman who killed her sister. What she does during surgery will leave you speechless. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who loves complicated romance and moral ambiguity, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose love over everything else, even when the world says it's wrong. Thank you.